Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason. Speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. Today's video, I'm continuing my series of ranking my 100 favorite albums of all time. This time I'm going with number 13 on my list, and that is the album that's called The Beatles, aka The White Album, which came out in 1968. Yeah, another, as you know, I'm a huge Beatles fan, so this is another obviously big Beatles album that I'll be talking about here in my top 20 favorite albums of all time, and some more Beatles albums to come. But this actually, I only have three other Beatles albums on my list, so this is my fourth favorite Beatles album, in fact. Might be surprising to some, but it's one that I really, really love anyways. And so I'm excited to talk about it here on Jason, the Old Millennial. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well on the Wednesday evening period, early kind of evening, late afternoon. I don't know what you want to call it. But yeah, continuing the series. Trying to get done with this series. I won't finish this year, but next year definitely will finish this series. My 100 favorite albums of all time. Of course, that's changed so much because I made this list like 2 years ago, and my list has changed so much in the last 2 years because I've been listening to a lot of different albums and doing deep dives on different artists I wasn't familiar with. But still, these are still albums I really enjoy, so I still love to talk about it, and still ones that will be up on my list. This time I'm talking about another Beatles album, of course. I've covered all 12, or I've covered 12 Beatles albums, I will be. This is actually I guess this will be the ninth Beatles album that I've talked about on my list of 100 favorite albums. Yeah, I'm a huge Beatles fan, love all their albums, except for Yellow Submarine's not on my list. That's the only one that's not gonna be here. But yeah, this is a interesting album. It's their only double album, 30 songs in total. Comes out in 1968. It's their ninth studio album, so it's pretty kind of late Beatles era. I would call this a late Beatles era. Definitely a lot has happened. There's a lot of changes during this time period. I didn't put down a lot of information on this one on my notes, except I'm sure it went number one in the UK and maybe the US. I think it's the same album in both. At this point, UK and US were coming out with the same albums for the Beatles. And I'm sure this went number one, as all their albums go number one and all that. And I don't know about any big singles at the time. Interesting, there was a big single coming out, I think, around this time. That was Hey Jude, which is not on the album, unfortunately. And I've talked to people that said, yeah, if they could have put Hey Jude on this album and taken off like Revolution 9, man, this would have been an even better album. And it's already, I think, a really good album, as I have it at number 13 on my list. Yeah, of course, the Beatles, I talked a lot about the Beatles during this time period. This is an interesting album because, you're coming off of a huge album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which was one of their biggest albums of all time. Probably considered by many as their greatest, maybe, or at least one of the top 2 or 3 albums all time, and won awards like the Grammy Album of the Year and all that. And so we're coming kind of off of that. This is 1968. During this time period, the Beatles, they started of course, George is really heavily into Hinduism, into the Indian kind of culture and religion. He kind of came to that at this point, and was, of course, doing a lot of music with the sitar, and loved doing transcendental meditation, was like a big thing at the time. And so they went and saw this guy, the Maharishi Yogi or something like that, I think his name was, who talked about transcendental meditation, transcendentalism meditation or something like that. And George kind of got him onto this guy, this guru, whatever, this Indian guru guy. And so then they ended up going to India and spending, I don't know how long, some months there, maybe, or some weeks at least, studying, I guess, transcendental meditation under him, I guess, seeing lectures or speeches by him, and mostly, spending time, meditating, and trying to, clear your mind and all that. But while they're there, they also had their guitars, and they were writing music while they were there, of course, because he can't spend all day meditating. You have to fill your day with other things. And so I think they filled their days with their guitars, writing songs individually. It seems like they weren't writing together as much at this point. Definitely, I feel like with this album, I feel like this is kind of the beginning of the end of the Beatles. You really see more of these songs individual than as a group. It seems like they're really going apart as a group. They're drifting apart as a group, and they're really set themselves as individual artists and kind of doing their own music and recording it on their own and not really getting a lot of input by the others as much as they used to. Anyways, I'm sure there's still some of that here, but of course, when they're in India, they also have musicians like Mike Love and Donovan, I know, was there. And even, I think they even would play music for like Donovan. Donovan would give suggestions like that. So it's kind of cool, have that kind of atmosphere around. And they wrote songs like Dear Prudence was about Prudence Farrow, who was there, who locked herself up in a room, and they're trying to get her to come out of the room. They write that song. Paul writes a song, Why Don't We Do It in the Road? Because he saw two monkeys doing it in the road, and so he writes a song for it. So there's definitely a lot of stuff that comes out of there. Anyway, so they had this huge songwriting, all these songs written during this time period. And so when they came back to do an album, that's why I decided to make a double album, because they just had just a huge influx of songs on there and did their first double album and only double album they ever did. Anyways, 30 songs. And it's an interesting album because it does have some of my least favorite songs of all time on it. And so it's weird that's this high on my list, even though there's some problematic songs on there. Obviously, I did I ranked every single Beatles song. I finished that a couple months ago. And my least favorite Beatles song of all time is Revolution Number 9, which is on this album towards the end, I believe, towards the last part of the album. And it's the longest song they ever did, and it's horrible. It's not really a song. It's just a bunch of sound effects and them talking and stuff. It's a really weird song. It's not even a song, so it's definitely the worst. But you also have Honey Pie and Wild Honey Pie are really bad. And why Don't We Do It in the Road? I think it's a really bad song. And I'm not a fan of like Truffles and Piggies. I'm not a fan of those. So definitely a lot of weeks. I mean, not a lot. There's about 6 songs that I would say I wish were not on this album. But even saying that, there's 24 really good songs. So luckily it's a double album that the 6 bad songs don't ruin the album for me. I still love what they do here. And what's interesting about this album to me is that it's not your usual Beatle type songs. It's definitely they definitely threw everything at it. They try to experiment. It's definitely very experimental. They definitely try to do different types of genres. And that's what I think is so interesting. What I love about this album is that they cover all these incredible different types of genres and still make it work, which I was like, I don't know how they were able to do that. But for instance, I mean, Back in the USSR has a Beach Boy sound to it. So they're kind of doing a beach rock song there. Which is interesting. Obla Di Obla Da, I don't know what you call that style, but it has a different style to it that they don't ever do. It's just, I almost want to call it like a Jamaican style or something, Caribbean style sound to it. Got Glass Onion, which is a very satirical song, which they self-referentiate other songs and lyrics from other songs, which is very kind of funny, and it's a pretty decent rock song. But I thought it was a pretty funny idea, and it works really well, I think. Even though it's not, and again, these are what I like about this album is it seems like this is the album for the deep cuts. This is a deep cut album. I feel like there's not that many big hits coming off here. I would say the only 2 songs I think that are that big is While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Blackbird. I think were definitely big songs that are well received, that are radio hits, And there's a couple of songs, maybe Obla Di, you probably heard somewhere, Back in USSR maybe, but a lot of stuff on here is just, if you don't know the Beatles that well, if you listen to this album and be like, wow, I never heard these songs before, because they are definitely out there kind of songs for the Beatles. And I'm sure this was somewhat of a shock from people that love the Hard Day's Night Days. And then you get to this and it's like, wow, this is way different than, I mean, they were already experimenting with Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's, but this really did a lot. Like I said, you got the continuing story of Bungalow Bill, which is kind of this child sing-along song, but a real fun song. Um, you got Happiness is Warm Gun, which is a psychedelic song that then it kind of, there's like three parts to it. And then the third part is this 50s doo-wop. And I absolutely love the last part of that song when it goes into almost that kind of 50s doo-wop style. And so you're like, what is the song? It's just all over the place, but it's so fun. Really, really love that song. Kind of underrated song in a way. You got Rocky Raccoon, which is like this kind of Western style, country Western style song where it seems like Paul's talking more than singing. But yeah, I really enjoy the song. It tells a story, and I don't know, it's kind of a fun song. Again, these are just kind of strange songs that work somehow to be able to make it work. I mean, you got Helter Skelter, which is the hardest song that they ever done. I mean, guitar wise, drum wise, I mean, it's the roughest, heaviest rock song they ever did. Even to this day, when I listen to Helter Skelter, I go, wow, this is really heavy. I mean, this is about heavier than what anybody else was doing at the time. I mean, maybe aside from like a Jimi Hendrix or then what Led Zeppelin would do a year later in 1969 with their albums. But I feel like you never really heard music like this before, Helter Skelter, and Paul was doing it. Paul wasn't known for the big rock songs, but he decided he wanted to outdo The Who, the Who said they have the dirtiest, grimiest, like heaviest rock song of all time. I Can See for Miles, I think, was the song, and Paul was like, I'm gonna do a song even heavier than that. And yeah, Helter Skelter is way heavier than the Who song I Can See for Miles, which is interesting. But a lot of people say Helter Skelter kind of paved the way for heavy metal later on, so it definitely was groundbreaking for the time, that Helter Skelter song. So you got really hard rock here. You got some ballads, like I said, Blackbird. George's Long, 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 I think is a really great hidden gem song, kind of ballad. Yeah, Julia is just a beautiful song. And like I said, Paul was known for the acoustic guitar ballads. John was known for like the more heavier rock songs maybe, but they switched that. John has one of the best acoustic ballads on the album, Julia. It's absolutely beautiful song by John. Of course, I mentioned Blackbird, absolutely amazing song. I Will is a fun love song by Paul as well. My the birthday song is a nice rock song. I think everybody's got something hiding except for Me and My Monkey. It's a strange title. It's the longest title in their discography, but it's a really good rock song, and it's a really one of their best rock songs in my opinion. That's not talked about enough. It's kind of a deep cut song with such a strange name, but I definitely, if you haven't heard that song, seek that song out. It's such a fun song, really well done. Of course, George does some of the Piggies, and I think is like a satire song that he loves to do. I'm not a fan, but still, I like that he's trying something different there. And Truffles is about like chocolate, because Eric Clapton was a fan of like chocolate or something. Anyway, so it's interesting how they come up with all these ideas for songs, and they throw them out there. Most of them work, not all of them, but a lot of them are just really good. Like I said, really good deep cut hidden gem songs that are some of my favorite Beatles songs, in fact. And I absolutely love Good Night, the last song on the album. I think it's a very good closer, actually. I've heard some people say that's the least favorite song on the album, and I disagree. I really like the song. John wrote it. Ringo sings it, and Ringo does a really good job vocally, and it's a lullaby song. Here again, I said, here they're throwing out a lullaby. They don't do lullaby songs, and yet I think it's a beautiful lullaby song. Of course, great orchestra behind it. But I absolutely love that song, and it's the very last song on there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have the list in front of me, but I think I've discussed most of, like I said, they dealt with all these different types: rock, psychedelic, ballads, all kinds of different genres. And that's why I kind of learned to love about this album. Because to be honest, growing up, this was probably my least favorite Beatles album. Because when I was a kid, when I first got into Beatles, definitely my favorite were, like the Hard Day's Night, Help era, I think, as a kid. I love the simple, catchy rock tunes that they did in ballads. That was kind of the Beatles was for me as a kid, was that, the Mop Top era, the early Beatles era. Anyways, and then I remember not really knowing the later period that often. I just listened to early period as a kid. And then as I got older, I was listening more to the mid and later periods. And by the time I was in high school, I was like more into Rubber Soul and Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper's was like more of my style. I was like, oh, I love this style that of their era of music, and that was definitely my favorite and all that. And then as I got older, I was starting to come around on this album, the White Album, because I think when I was younger and I was listening to this, I was like, these songs are so weird. They're not hit songs. They're kind of these deep cuts, like I said, and I just not into all these different songs that aren't the big ones, I think. But of course, as I'm getting older and I'm listening to these albums more and more, I've just totally fallen in love with this album. It's, like I said, it's my fourth favorite Beatles album. One of my favorite albums of all time, number 13 on my list. And I think I love it because it's just so different than anything else they did, I feel like. And somehow they did all these different genres, and it's just fun to hear all the different styles in this album. Yeah, it's just absolutely some amazing stuff here. And yeah, so here it's one of my favorite at number 13. So I think it's enough I can talk about the album itself. Let me get to my top three. It's really hard to do a top three because there's 30 songs here, and there's so many songs that could get in here. There's two that are definitely my top two. Number three was kind of hard to get because there's so many that could fit in here. Some songs that didn't fit in here. Like I said, Happiness Warm Gun didn't get in my top three, but really like that song. Like I said, Julia, I really like that. It's beautiful. I even really like Obla Di Obla Da is one that's really grown on me over the years. It's a real fun song. Would be up there. Mother Nature's Son, I think, is a really great song. I like that one. I Will is great. Yeah, all these could get in here. But number three, I went with Dear Prudence. Dear Prudence is an interesting song because I wasn't that aware of Dear Prudence until I was playing Beatles Rock Band on the Wii. I used to have a Wii. And it seems like this is 10 years ago, maybe, or whatever, whenever Beatles Rock Band came out. I was really into Rock Band. I love Guitar Hero and Rock Band. I played all of those. I kind of miss it. Those were real fun to play, especially when you had a group of people. But I remember when that came out, and I was so excited. I got Beatles Rock Band. I remember when we got to Dear Prudence, I was like, Dear Prudence? What is this song? I didn't even know this was a Beatles song. It like totally took me by surprise. And I played it on the Rock Band. I was like, wow, this is a really cool song. I love this acoustic guitar beginning to it. And I tried playing it on acoustic guitar, and I have a really hard time with it. It's kind of a weird picking pattern to do, but I love that acoustic guitar at the beginning. It's great. And then it kind of evolves into a rock song. The electric guitar comes in, and the bass. The bass and the drums, and it turns into like a cool rock song towards the middle or towards that. And but yeah, I love the drums and the guitar throughout the whole song. It's just great. With John's great vocals there. And at the end, it goes right back to the acoustic guitar. So almost like a ballad rock song, and then back to the ballad at the end. And yeah, it's such a fun song. I love the different tempo changes in it and what it does. Yeah, I think it's an excellent song. A very deep cut hidden gem, kind of underrated song. Dear Prudence at number three. Number two, I went with Blackbird. Again, really one of my favorite. I think this was in my top. I didn't make it my top 10 favorite Beatles songs, but I think it was pretty close. It was like maybe my top 15. So it was right outside. Maybe it was like number 11 or 12. I forget. It's like right outside the top 10. I absolutely love this song that Paul wrote. And it's one of the best acoustic guitar picking songs. And I've played this on the guitar. Love playing this. It has such a great dun, 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 dun. No, that's another song. I'm trying to think of what Blackbird is. Bum, 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 bum. Anyways, it's Blackbird singing. That whole beginning part. Absolutely love that, what the acoustic guitars are. And it's just Paul by himself. It's one of those where it's like you don't need any other instrument, just Paul and the acoustic guitar, and he can just totally write an amazing song. And it's kind of an uplifting song. I've talked about this when I talked about my 100 favorite, I talked about all my Beatles favorite songs. I ranked them all. It's talking about Blackbird. He's talking about Blackbird, but it kind of seems like talking about somebody who is suppressed or who's downtrodden, and he's talking about learn to fly and fix your wing or something. Anyways, so it's this kind of encouraging song to not give up or something like that. Of course, he said that he wrote it about the Black Civil Rights movement at the time. Anyways, was kind of his inspiration for the song. So it definitely has that in there. This kind of inspirational encouragement song. So I love the lyrics of it, but just his voice and that acoustic guitar, just absolutely amazing. One I absolutely love. Number one, this was in my top 10 favorite Beatles songs, and this is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It is my third favorite George Harrison song. There's two more that I like even more than this, but this is just an absolutely masterpiece song by George Harrison, who wrote the song because he wanted to see if he can write a song by pointing to a word in a book or something. He took a book and he's going to point to a random page, point to a random word, and then write a song about it. Which kind of pointed to the word weeps, and so then he came up with the song, which is a cool title, one of the coolest titles of all time. While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's such an interesting title, and he's got his buddy Eric Clapton here, and of course Eric Clapton, one of the greatest guitarists of all times, puts out this incredible guitar solo in there, and the guitar work is great. I love how it starts with a piano and then acoustic guitar, and then that guitar, the electric comes in. And oh, so good. And I like the lyrics are really good too as well. I kind of like what George Harrison, he's really, 1968, you really see him becoming a really strong songwriter, of course. And then he has two monsters in 1969 as well, with Something and Here Comes the Sun. So, I mean, he's gone a long ways from his, I think, songwriting to being equal with John and Paul at this point as a great songwriter. But yeah, it's just the guitar work, the whole instrumentation, it's just a masterpiece song that I love listening to over and over again. And so that's number one for me, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And this is my review on the White Album, aka the White Album, actually called The Beatles. Came out in 1968, number 13 on my list. So that's my list for today. Please comment, what do you think about the White Album? Do I have it too high on my list? Do you have it lower on yours? Do you like it as much as I do? Is it least favorite Beatles album? Love to read any comments on here. What are your favorite songs off the album? Anything. Love to read your comments and I appreciate that. And again, thank you to anybody who's watching this video. Thank you for liking it. And I thank you to all my subscribers for supporting my channel. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day.